ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तम श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नंदनाय च नन्दगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनच्छलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपः कदा मह्यं ददाति सुपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरोः श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं सागरजातं सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्णकरुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धु जगत्पते पेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी शुभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वंच कल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीधरानाथ नाम्ने। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमती भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष निवादि पाश्चात्य विस्तारिणे। मुखं करोति वाचालं पंगुं लंघयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारिणं परमानंद माधवं श्री चैतन्य ईश्वरं। हरि ओम तत्सत्। Hare Krishna. So welcome all and apologies for slight disruption, which was beyond my control and unexplained. So material nature is always very complicated. Why certain things happen, whether it is technology or it is life, sometimes very hard for ordinary conditioned souls to figure out. So we are moving on to chapter 20 of the 5th canto in our discussion of the Bhagavad Cosmology. In our previous class, we wound up the section which completed the discussion of Jambudvip. All the 9 varshas, including Bharat Varsha. The last class was especially on the Kim Purusha Varsha and the Bharat Varsha. And we concluded that with a detailed discussion about Bharat Varsha. I just want to show you, before we go into this chapter, a quick visual representation of Bharat Varsha and how Earth looks like, so that you can visualize it a bit better. Let me know when you can see this. Is it visible?
Yes, Babuji.
Yeah. So if you can visualize, we discussed the Jambudvip with its 9 divisions. So this division is the lower part of the circle, which is the Bharat Varsha. And like what we discussed, it is divided into 9 khandas, with the ocean slicing and dividing this piece of land into 9 parts. The southernmost tip, which is the 9th part, is Bharat Khanda, while all these other khandas are strips of land surrounded by salt water ocean on both sides. This ocean actually reaches and almost kind of touches this part. This is the saltwater ocean all around. The Bharat Khanda is different because it is situated as a circular sphere. And the Vedas are very clear about this. not just the Bhagavad, but Vayu Puran, Markandeya Puran, quite a few scriptures. In fact, it is described that it is like a bale fruit to look at from outside. And that's why sometimes it is also known as Sudarshana Dvipa. Very beautiful to look at. So it's like a round ball. You see, most of the other Dvipas and others, they have, very peculiar characteristics, but Bharat Khanda is very unique in this regard. If you look at the same Bharat Khanda from a different perspective, can you see this?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhuji. So this is the eighth Khanda, which is this part, I believe. I am not counting, but anyway, there's the eighth land. Then there's the saltwater ocean. Then there is the Bharat Khanda. It looks like this. If you look at it, this is the lateral view. This is the top view. And the Earth planet, like the way we understand, at the South Pole, it touches the saltwater ocean. So where the Antarctica is located, it is said that there are huge ice pillars. Because this is not to scale. So this is just to give you an indication, which actually somehow connect to the saltwater ocean. Obviously, the saltwater ocean is subtle, so obviously it is not visible to our eyes. But the connection is at the South Pole. So in theory, if from India you went all the way to Antarctica, and if you were able to go past this into the saltwater ocean, which is subtle, you were able to somehow, then you go here, then you will go into the other khanda. That's why the scriptures say that these khandas are inaccessible to us. And not just from Bharat Khanda to the other khandas, but each of these. There are different names for these different khandas. So our khanda is known as Bharat Khanda. It is also known as Sudarshan Dvipa. It is also known as Kumaraka Dvipa. There are different names. And there are names for each of these khandas as well, but you cannot jump across. So humans in these other khandas in their own lifetime cannot jump across the other khandas. Exactly what is the barrier to cross, I do not know. But here, obviously, we are not able to sail across because there is a kind of a subtle connection between the Earth planet and the saltwater ocean. So that's kind of to give you that view. So now I want to go back this picture. Can you see this? So this is again a top view of Bhumandal. This is again a zoom out now. Now this particular chapter, the chapter we are discussing today, which is chapter 20, is entitled Studying the Structure of the Universe. Now the focus of this particular chapter, when we say that it is about the structure of the universe, is about the horizontal structure of the universe. So for the last 3-4 chapters, our focus has been on Jambudvip. We discussed about Mount Sumeru. We discussed about Jambudvip and the Ilavarta Varsha in the center of the Ilavarta Varsha, there being Mount Sumeru. Then we discussed about Ganges coming, splitting into 4 parts, coming down, flowing in all the directions, so many mountains, so many Varshas. We have been discussing about the residents of those various Varshas. We discussed how other than Bharat Varsha, all others are Bhauma Swarga. Bharat Varsha is Karma Bhumi. So that has been our focus. So our focus all this while has been this blue dot. So Bharat Varsha is at the tip of this blue dot. So you just imagine, once you have zoomed out, how small it has become. And just for your information, this is not to scale. Now I'll explain to you what it means not to scale. This is a very, very simplistic view. Because as we started in our discussion, we discussed that Prevrat Maharaj divided the Bhumandal. He was ruling over the entire Bhumandal. With his chariot, he created troughs. Because he had 7 suns, he divided the Bhumandal into 7 circular divisions, which are separated by 7 oceans. And to each of his sons, he gave one particular Dvipa. Why Dvipa? Because on both sides of each of these land masses, there is an ocean. Of course, except the last one and the first one. Actually, even for the last one, but except for the first one, because for the first one, it's in the center. That's why there's only one ocean surrounding it, which is the saltwater ocean. And that's Jambudvip, which we have already discussed. So the focus of this chapter is the conversation around this structure. What are all these dvipas? What are their dimensions? Who lives there? What is their geography? Going all the way 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And after the 7 dvipas, beyond them, what is located? Going into the Golden Land, going into the Lokalok mountains, going into the Aloka Varsha, and finally the gap between the universal coverings and the universal coverings. So that's basically the focus of today's conversation. So it's going to be interesting. Of course, some of these aspects we have already discussed earlier, but we'll go into a little bit more detail in today's conversation. Again, like what I mentioned in earlier classes, we will not be able to go into all the details which are mentioned in this chapter, because a lot of it is information, a lot of it is numbers. There are a list of names of mountains, there are a list of names of rivers, list of names of the children of the various rulers of each of these dvipas, and I do not intend to read that catalog. So for that detailed information, you can refer back to the Bhagavad. Our purpose will be to get a good understanding of the horizontal structure. And I'm going to use around 7-8 diagrams to illustrate this, so that at the end of this class, you have a good appreciation. And do not worry, these diagrams, whatever I'm showing you today, I will also post it later in the WhatsApp group, so you have a reference. So no need to worry. Of course, some of you, if you want to keep these images for your future reference, you can download it from WhatsApp and just keep it in a folder so that you can always refer to them. So broadly, this particular chapter starts with the discussion of the 6 dvipas, because the first one, which is Jambudvip, the innermost, we have already discussed. That's not going to be repeated. The 6 other dvipas, 1 plus 6, which is total of 7, is the major discussion of this chapter. 75% of this chapter is that discussion. After that, there is an area or a particular geographical feature which is known as the Loka mountains, which divides the Bhumandal into the Loka Varsha and the Aloka Varsha. So that concept and that structure and that geography is discussed. What is the Loka Varsha? What is the Loka mountain? What is on the Loka mountains? Because there are certain significant aspects of the Loka mountain that need to be discussed. It's a significant geographical feature and not just another mountain, because it is the tallest mountain in the universe. It is actually much, much taller than even Mount Sumeru. Much, much taller. So, of course, I will show you other diagrams which will give you some rough idea about how tall it is. So all those discussions we will have, and there are some interesting finer details even in the Aloka region, which is especially the Andhatamas region and the Ghanodaka region. So we will have a little bit of conversation around that. The last few verses of this chapter are actually focused on Surya and glories of Surya. We may touch that very briefly, but we will not go into that because there's not so much of a geographical discussion, but just glorifying Surya. by names such as Martanda and Vairaja and explaining its significance as far as the universe is concerned. So we'll briefly touch that. So basically, that's the discussion for this chapter. So as I mentioned, Maharaj Prevrat divided the earth into the 7 islands, and he gave the 7 islands to his 7 sons. The 7 islands, even though this particular diagram is not to scale, it is said each of these islands is surrounded by an ocean where the surrounding ocean is of the same width as the island. Width means we are talking about this as the width. I hope you can see my cursor moving. This is the width. So this ocean, the sugarcane ocean, for example, which surrounds Plakshadweep, is of the same width as the Plakshadweep. And then the subsequent dweep is twice the width of the previous ocean. So this is twice the width of this, which means is also twice the width of Plakshadweep, Shalmaladweep, and the surrounding ocean is also the same width as this dweep, which means it is twice the previous one. And this continues all the way up to the 7th dweepa, which means each of the width of these dweepa and the subsequent ocean is twice the previous one. I don't know whether you can imagine that, but 2 raised to 7. Anybody can do an immediate 2 raised to 7? 2 raised to 4 is 16, 5 is 32, 6 is 64, and 7 is 128. 2 raised to 7 is 128. Correct? Yeah. So 128 times Jambudweep's distance is the width of the last dweepa. So can you imagine if we drew this diagram to scale, how much we will struggle to actually see and understand its various divisions. So that's why I'm saying, do not just, this is just to indicate the relative positions. This is not to scale, disclaimer. If you want to see it to scale, there are diagrams which show it to scale, but when you actually see it to scale, Jambudweep becomes a small dot, literally becomes a small dot as compared to these other huge dweepas. So first thing is that the saltwater ocean, its width is same as the diameter of Jambudweep. And what is the diameter of Jambudweep? It is around 1 lakh yojanas, 100,000 yojanas. So the width of the saltwater ocean is also 100,000 yojanas. Plakshadweepa, which is this green dweepa which surrounds the saltwater ocean, is 2 lakh yojanas in width. It is twice the width of the saltwater ocean. And it is surrounded by sugarcane juice ocean, which is of a similar width as Lakshadweep. Shalmali is twice of Laksha. Ushadweep is twice of Shalmali. Krauncha is twice of Sha, and so on, so forth. Okay, I hope all of this is clear. The names of these dweepas is either based on some special geographical feature that is on the dweepa. It is not so much based on the name of the children. It is based on some. It is either based on a very special tree. For example, Shalmali Dweep is because there's a Shalmali tree there. Huge Shalmali tree. Or there are some plants. For example, Kusha Dweepa. Kusha Dweepa is full of Kusha grass. Kusha Dweepa is named based on that. Or there are certain mountains. So there are various names for these various Dweepas based on geographical features. Each of these Dweepas are also divided into Varshas. Just like when we discussed Jambu Dweepa is divided into how many Varshas? Anyone recollects?
9 Varshas, Prabhuji.
Thank you. The Jambu Dweep is divided into 9 Varshas, but the other 6 Dweepas, from Dweep 2 to Dweep 6, they are also divided, but they are divided into 7 Dweepas. 7 Varshas. Right from the second Dweepa to the 6th Dweepa, except for the last Dweepa. Last Dweepa is a little different, and we discuss that into a little bit more detail. The last Dweepa being the Pushkara Dweepa. Pushkara Dweepa is very special because there is the Manasottara mountain range, and we'll discuss about that a bit more. It is a very special. But Dweepa number 2 to Dweepa number 6, all of them are divided into 7 Varshas. Why? Because each of them has 7 mountains and 7 rivers. And each of the children of Priyavrat who ruled these islands, they had 7 children each, and they gave each of these Varshas to be ruled by each of their children. So those days they didn't need courts and wills and property distribution and all that, Mountain, river, you take this side, I take this side, he takes that side, very simple. Now somebody asked, did they plan the number of children as family planning based on the mountains and the rivers? I don't have an answer to that. Maybe yes, because obviously they didn't create mountains based on number of children. Because mountain and rivers are geographical features which pre-existed. Okay, so I think we can safely assume so, even though there is no clear information to that regard. How did the number of children? Probably they knew, if he had more, then, it will become difficult to divide the kingdom. So probably they, did a family planning accordingly. 7 mountains, 7 rivers. Okay, let's have 7 children. And let's distribute 7 boys, to be more specific, and divide the kingdom amongst them. The last Dweepa, which is Pushkara Dweepa, has one very big mountain which runs in the center of the Dweepa, but along the entire periphery. For most of these other Dweepas, there are mountains, somewhat like this. I'm just showing somewhat like this, which kind of divide it into 7 parts with the rivers flowing around. But for Pushkara Dweepa, there is a mountain known as the Manasottara mountain range, which runs almost in the middle, and it runs across the whole circle. Now, this Manasottara mountain is very special, and we'll come to that discussion a little later. Anybody knows why Manasottara mountain is special in one sentence?
Sun's orbit.
Thank you. So you can see the sun written here. Okay. So the sun moves around on top of the Manasottara mountain. Not that it is touching the Manasottara mountain. It follows the orbit, which is known as Samvatsara. It follows the path of the top of the Manasottara mountain, even though it is located in height up much above the Manasottara mountain. So that's how the sun moves according to Bhagavad cosmology. So this is how briefly the geography is. Now, one more thing I want to mention, that these various oceans, sugarcane, liquor, clarified butter, milk, emulsified yogurt. When Pavaneshwar Prabhu was explaining this in class, and I'm just reporting what I heard from him. So he said, for example, it is mentioned in the Bhagavad also, when it says liquor ocean, it doesn't mean it is, full of whiskey or rum or beer or something like that. Anybody, I'm not talking here, you're all saintly people. But anybody who gets excited and wants to go to Ushadvipa or Shalmali Dvipa, think that they will take a mug and start drinking. So the description is, it is actually an ocean. It is a kind of ocean where the water smells like liquor. So when we say this is a sugarcane ocean, of course, saltwater ocean, we have direct experience, so we don't need to speculate what a saltwater ocean is. There is a sweet water drinking ocean here on the farthest side. But many of these other oceans, may not literally be, like a milk ocean here, literally in the sense that it is full of cow's milk. It is milky in some way. Now, the detailed chemical composition or the source and all that is not given here. Maybe other scriptures have mentioned it. But and there is a reason why these oceans are like this, but I'm not going to go into that detail because that has not been described directly here. It could also be because of the nature of the rivers which flow into it and the kind of activities which are done in that dvipa, which lead to the oceans around that dvipa acquiring a particular flavor. You understand what I'm saying? So just like you go to Vrindavan today, you go to Yamuna. Sadly, of course, the sad reality. You go to Yamuna and you taste Yamuna water, you may start tasting chemicals in it. So it is water. Why? Because so many industrial plants upstream pour their effluent chemicals into the water of Yamuna and contaminate it. So you may say this is chemical water. Why? Because of this reason. Of course, this is a sad reality. We hope the government has taken some steps, but we hope can take more steps to prevent the contamination of our rivers. But there could be various reasons why certain water bodies acquire a certain quality because of certain kinds of rivers flowing into it. So I just leave you with that thought. I do not know more specific information in this regard, but this is what I have. Okay, so I hope you are with me so far. So this is twice. So you can imagine how big it is. Now, I'm going to give some characteristic details of some of these dvipas. Now, first of all, we discussed already that just like in Jambudvip, where other than Bharatvarsha, all others are Bhaumaswarga, all these dvipas are also, they're also heavenly. It is said that the lifespan in most of these dvipas is around 1,000 years or more for the residents. They have deva-like bodies. They have children in the way that devas have. Very powerful senses. Don't have to do 9 to 5 jobs. Generally, having a good, enjoyable life. Beautiful settings. Wonderful geographical characteristics. Plenty of natural resources. In each of these dvipas, the residents there are actually worshipping a particular form of the Lord, a particular deity. In each of these islands, there is a naming of what are the names of the 7 mountains, what are the name of the 7 rivers from island 2nd to island 6, and I'm not going to go through that. That is listed. But there is one thing which is mentioned about the residents of these different dvipas. It is mentioned that there are 4 types of living beings, or 4 categories amongst the people live in these varshas. So just like in Bharat Varsha, we have the Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. There is some kind of a similar organization where it is said it resembles that, even though Varnashram Dharma is not present in the same way as on Bharat Varsha, because Bharat Varsha is Karma Bhumi with strict Varnashram principles, which have violated things about punishment and sin. But there is some form of social organization of 4 categories in most of these dvipas. For example, the Plaksha Dvipa, it is said that there are 4 castes: the Hamsas, the Patangas, the Urdhvayanas, and the Satyangas. The Bhagavad doesn't go into the detail of what each of these categories represent. The Shalmali Dvipas, there are Shrutidharas, Viryadharas, Vasundharas, and Ishandharas. The Kusha Dvipa, there are Kushalas, Kovidas, Abhiyuktas, and Kulakas, and so on and so forth. Because there are a list of names and there is not much detail, so I don't want to go in there. But Prabhupada, as well as the Bhagavad, mentions that some of these castes can roughly map to social divisions based on similar categories like Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, and they very cooperatively work together in each of these dvipas. And they all nicely are engaged in the worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In fact, it is said that the 7 sons of Priyavrat, after they set up and distributed the kingdoms to their respective children, by dividing these areas into varshas, they themselves retired and they devoted the rest of their life fully to worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There are some other characteristics of these dvipas. The last dvipa, which is Pushkara Dvipa, I will come into a little later. I just want to quickly mention that the deities which are worshipped in these various dvipas are actually various aspects of the Supreme Lord as a Devata, which means the Surya, the Chandra, Agni, Varuna, Vayu, and Brahma. They are worshipped in these various dvipas. For example, Plaksha Dvipa, they worship Surya. Shalmali Dvipa, they worship Soma. Kusha Dvipa, they worship Agni. Krauncha, they worship Varuna. Shaka Dvipa, they worship Vayu. And Pushkara Dvipa, they worship Brahma. Now, there's one thing I want to mention, that each of these demigod positions actually represent an aspect of the Supreme Lord himself. Even though there is a Devata in charge of these various positions, and they are demigods, they are jivas like us in the sense that they are jivas, but they are obviously much more powerful and very pious. But the positions themselves and the name themselves are actually the names of the Lord. Agni, Vayu, Surya, because these are actually different vibhutis of the Supreme Lord. And that is why while they are worshipping Surya, they are worshipping the Supreme Lord in the form of Surya. They are worshipping Vayu, they are worshipping the Supreme Lord's potency in the form of Vayu and Soma and so on and so forth. So that is why those who are more mature in spiritual understanding, they understand that these various devatas positions, their vibhutis are actually nothing but various aspects of the Lord, even though the devatas themselves are empowered living beings on behalf of the Lord. Very quickly, the Jambudvip was ruled by Priyavrat son Agnidra, Lakshadvip by Priyavrat son Idmajivha, Shalmali Dvip by Yajnabahu, Kushadvip by Hiranyareta, Krauncha by Ghritaprishta, Shakadvip by Medhatithi, and Pushkaradvip by Vitihotra. Each of them had 7 sons, other than Vitihotra, who had 2 sons, because he had 2 parts because of one mountain. We assume he did a family planning to have only 2 sons, Ramanaka and Dhataki. And he gave one side of the mountain to Ramanaka, and another side of the mountain to Dhataki. Across these various dvipas, some dvipas have very peculiar characteristics which the Bhagavad mentions, and that's why I want to briefly mention some of these characteristics before we move ahead from this section, because it is interesting. Lakshadvipa, the second dvipa, immediately after Jambudvipa, is so called because there is a plaksha tree. Plaksha tree is a golden tree which is shining and very brilliant. It is very tall. How tall? As tall as the Jambu tree which is in Pilavarta Varsha. You remember, in Jambu Pilavarta Varsha. How tall is that? 1,100 yojanas tall and 100 yojanas wide. Quite big. And another feature is that at the root of this laksha tree, there are 7 flames or 7 kinds of fire. Now, I do not know what are those 7 kinds of fires, but that is a very peculiar, distinctive feature of Lakshadweep. And Surya Dev is worshipped. Shalmali Dweep is also named for a similar reason, that there is a Shalmali tree. The dimensions of this Shalmali tree are the same as the Plaksha tree, which is 1,100 yojanas tall and 100 yojanas wide. But there is one interesting feature about the Shalmali tree on this Shalmali Dweep, is that on the Shalmali tree resides a very, very special personality. The king of the birds, Garuda, the carrier of Lord Vishnu, has his residence on the Shalmali tree in Shalmali Dweep. So please note. So we already know the location of Hanumanji, which is in King Purusha Varsha, and we know Garudaji is 2 associates of the Lord. He's on the Shalmali tree in Shalmali. And what is he doing there? He's worshipping Lord Hari by reciting beautiful prayers. The Kusha Dvipa, the subsequent Dvipa we discussed, where Agni Dev is worshipped. Shalmali Dvipa, Soma Dev is worshipped. In Kusha Dvip, Agni Dev is worshipped, and Kusha Dvip is the place where Kusha grass abounds. It's very beautiful, like flames. Very beautiful. And Agni Dev is being worshipped there, and a lot of Vedic sacrifices are continuously being performed by the residents of Kusha Dvipa. Who are the residents of Kusha Dvipa? The Kushalas, Kovidas, Abhiyuktas, and the Kulakas. They are continuously performing various kinds of Vedic sacrifices using the Kusha grass and performing various kinds of yajnas. The Krauncha Dvipa is so called because of a mountain rather than a tree or grass. And the mountain in Krauncha Dvipa is by the name of Krauncha. The residents there worship Varuna, worship the Supreme Lord as Varuna. This Krauncha mountain is very special. The Bhagavad mentions that although at one time Kartikeya had attacked this mountain and practically burned all the vegetation on it. Now, why Kartikeya attacked and why he burned, that story is not mentioned here. Must be in another Puranas. But this is just for you to note that Kartikeya had at one point burned. Anybody knows where Kartikeya resides? Kartikeya, other than one form of Kartikeya, which is residing along with Lord Shiva in Kailash, Kartikeya is said to be residing on Mangal Graha. That is Kartikeya's planet. What is Mangal Graha? Mars. So just for your information, those who are going to Mars and sending rovers there, please note, suddenly you may see Kartikeya with his veil and he may, not be very happy that you are sending rovers on his planet. So this Krauncha mountain was attacked by Kartikeya and it is said, it was burned, but nonetheless, Krauncha mountain, because on both sides there is an ocean of milk, and because it is on one side there is ocean of milk, and it is also being protected by Varuna Dev, the mountains are said to be fearless. The Shaka Dweep, there is a Shaka tree. The Shaka tree is said to be very, very fragrant. And that whole island of Shaka Dweep is said to be very fragrant. Vayudev is worshipped there. And that whole island is very, very fragrant. The last island, which is the Pushkara Dweep. Pushkara means lotus. The island is so known, this Dweepa is so known because there is 1,000 petal, sorry, not 1,000, 100 million petaled, 100 million petaled golden lotus on this island. Now, why is there such a lotus flower? It is said that lotus flower is said to be the residence place of Lord Brahma. So Lord Brahma has various residences. Obviously, Brahmalok, he has a residence. Here also he has a residence, correct? Like some of us have multiple residences. One in Kuala Lumpur, we have bought an apartment. One back in Hyderabad or Mumbai or Chennai or wherever we have. So one is a primary home, one is a holiday home. So there is one residence of Brahmaji here, which is 100 million lotus, golden petal lotus, which is on the Pushkara Dweepa. It's said to be very, very effulgent. As effulgent, each of the petal is as effulgent as the flames of a fire. So Brahmaji resides there, and Brahmaji is being worshipped. Brahma, because he is the representative of the Supreme Lord, is an empowered incarnation. In fact, there are said to be two kinds of Brahmas. There is Hiranyagarbha Brahma and Vairajya Brahma. Vairajya Brahma. Hiranyagarbha Brahma and Vairajya Brahma. So sometimes Brahma is the Supreme Lord himself and sometimes Brahma is a living entity. Who becomes Brahma? That living entity who performs his prescribed duty correctly without any fault for 100 lifetimes consecutively is allowed to become Brahma. So we are already disqualified. We have to start from scratch. Because even in this life, we are not properly following our ashram duty. So we have to even begin our counting. Anyway, as devotees, we do not need to become Brahma. We can go even a position beyond Lord Brahma's position by becoming a pure devotee. But nonetheless, so there are these two aspects of Brahma, Vairajya Brahma and Hiranyagarbha Brahma. One is the Lord as Brahma, the Vairaj Brahma, and another is Hiranyagarbha Brahma, who is the living entity in the form of Brahma. So Brahmaji has a residence here on this lotus flower, and that is why it is known as Pushkara Dvipa. Pushkar being that particular lotus flower. In fact, if you remember, there is a Pushkar, which is a Pushkar Dham on earth where Brahmaji is worshipped. Correct? In Rajasthan, there is a Pushkar Tirtha with the same name, which is the residence of Brahma on Bharata Khanda. The only official temple of Brahmaji on earth. So now we'll discuss a little bit more about the Pushkara Dvipa. The Pushkara Dvipa is different from the previous 5 Dvipas that we discussed. The previous 5 Dvipas we discussed have 7 mountains, 7 rivers, 7 Varshas. The Pushkara Dvipa has 1 mountain which runs. You see this gray line, the center of the Dvipa, which runs circular across, which divides the Pushkara Dvipa into 2 parts. One is this side of the mountain, the other is this side of the mountain. The width and the height of the Manasottara mountain is around 10,000 yojanas. On the 4 directions of this mountain, on top of the mountain, are the residences, residential quarters of 4 demigods, devatas. On the east side is the Devadhani, which is the abode of Indra. On the south side is Samyamani, the abode of Yamaraj. West is Nimalochani, the abode of Varuna. North is Vibhavari, the abode of. Now, if you recollect, there are also abodes we discussed on the top of Mount Sumeru. Do you recollect? On the mountain, there is, in the center is Manovati, which is the abode of Brahma. Actually, those are not abodes, but those were assembly places. Those are office assembly homes. So they are offices. These are residential quarters. So just in case you are getting confused. So Mount Sumeru is considered the office space where there are different conference rooms of different devatas. Perhaps there is a table and chair and some sitting place for each of them. But these are said to be residences. So in case you want to visit them, whenever they are here, you can visit them here. So the Devadham, the residence of Indra, which is known as Devadhani, is situated here on the top of the Manasottara mountain on the west side. This is Devadham. This is Nimaloshan, Varuna's residence. Vibhavari, Moon's residence. And the south is not visible here, but on the opposite side here, down below, is Samyamani, the abode of Yamaraj. It is said, Suryadev, who's riding the chariot, his chariot, it is said the wheels of the chariot of Suryadev is rotating around Mount Sumeru. Sumeru is at the center. Sumeru is the axis around which Suryadev rotates, but his rotation is guided by the top of the Manasottara mountain, which means the orbit of the sun is around the Manasottara mountain. I'm showing you the movement. Okay. This is how the sun rotates. This orbit is known as Samvatsara, which means it takes Suryadev Suryadev follows this particular orbit over the day. So this whole orbit, Samvatsara, takes around 1 year. 6 months out of this, the orbit is in the Uttarayan region. 6 months it is in the Dakshinayan region. And we will discuss this sun's orbit a little bit more detail and how the day and night are created. That is covered in a subsequent chapter. So I will not go into that now. the rough distance between the center of Mount Sumeru up to Manasottara mountain is roughly 15.75 million yojanas. The Pushkara Dvipa is surrounded by a sweet drinking water ocean, which is of the same width as the Pushkara Dvipa. Again, this is not to scale. This is the same width as the Pushkara Dvipa. And beyond that, is an area where living entities do not reside. Now, because it is 9:58 p.m. And we have completed around 33 verses of this chapter. I want to take a pause here. I was hoping to complete this chapter, but there's a very interesting section in the rest of this chapter, which is around Lokaloka mountain, as well as some other geographical features. I thought perhaps we will not rush through it, because that's a very interesting part. So I'm going to take a pause here. So to summarize, the area of, okay, let me show you one diagram before we conclude. Okay, can you see this?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, so this is the Dvipas that we discussed. Correct? Okay, Jambu Dvip is at the center. This is zoom out. These are the 7 Dvipas with the sweet drinking water ocean around it. This entire 7 circles with the 7 Dvipas is actually this small circle. Okay, zoom out. It's the small circle, boundary of the 7 Dvipas and 7 oceans. So we only discuss this. This zoomed in is this. Out of which here you zoom in, this is this. Out of this, if you zoom in, you see the 9 Varshas. If you zoom in, see the Bharat Varsha. See the earth. Yes, if you can imagine, good. If you can't imagine, it's okay. So we have discussed this part. Beyond this inhabitable region, there are other features known as the Golden Land, Swarna Bhumi, after which there is the Loka mountain, which has certain distinctive features which we will discuss. And then there is the Aloka Varsha. Beyond the Aloka Varsha, there is a small gap, and beyond that gap, there is the universal coverings. So the remaining part outside the Loka Varsha, the Loka Varsha actually you can say includes the Swarna Bhumi, and there is an area also known as Vajralepa, but we'll discuss all that in our next class. With diagrams, I have diagrams for that. So it will not be too difficult. But just wanted you, before we conclude the class for today, to appreciate that this is actually a small disk at the center of the universe. All that we have discussed so far. Okay. There are various other interesting pictures, but we will come to that when we go into our next class. So I'm going to pause here. Anybody has any questions? Sorry, it was a bit theoretical today. But nonetheless, I'm just following the sequence of the Bhagavad. I hope you learned something interesting. Okay. Any questions, any comments? Yeah, Suresh, as always.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, in Bhagavatam it says like sun and moon are the eyes of God, right? So what is the reference to this diagram?
They are the witness to the activities of the living entities. Sun and the moon are the main luminaries in the universe. We'll discuss this in the next chapter. The next chapter is entitled The Orbit of the Sun, and it goes into the topic of the sun and the orbit of the sun into great detail. So sun and the moon are the main luminaries in the material world. The sun being the main, the primary is the sun, and the sun is said to be practically in the center of the universe. Of course, it goes around its own orbits. Bhur, Bhuva, Swaha are all illuminated by the sun. And the sun and the moon are the two eyes of the Supreme Lord. They are compared to the eyes in the universal form of the Lord. If we imagine the universe to be the form of, like the body of the Lord, the sun and the moon are like the eyes.
Okay.
Also, as far as karma is concerned, there are said to be various witnesses to the karma. For example, let's say, one of us is taken to Yamraj's place, and Yamraj says, "You did this." And say, no, your computer records are wrong. You wrongly copied somebody else's record there. I am a good devotee. You ask anybody, go to my temple, you ask my counselor, you ask my temple president. I'm so good, I'm so nice. I never did something like this. So what Yamraj will do? Okay, really? Says here, but you are saying no, okay. Then Yamraj will call the witnesses. There are various witnesses of our karma. And the sun and moon are amongst them. There are others, I don't remember all of them. They can come and they can say, yes, on this day, this time, this exactly is what happened, and this is what I saw Suraj doing. Secretly, when nobody else was looking, he was doing. Of course, the ultimate witness is the Paramatma. Obviously, Yamaraj cannot summon the Paramatma. But so for managing the karmic affairs of the universe, various deities act as witness of our karma. So sun and moon are amongst the witnesses.
Yeah.
Okay, like that.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
The sun is very, very important. Yes. Okay. Yes, Tarun Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Guruji.
Hare
Guruji, I have a question. And like this entire universe is such a big, and we are just tiny dot. And within a dot, within Bharat Varsha, we have Lord Rama born, we have Krishna born, we have all different avatars born. So is this coincidence that this is entire earth only within Bharat Bhumi, in Mathura, in Ayodhya, and other places? These are born. It's just a destiny, or is in it within a small earth, in a small piece of land, all the different avatars were born. So is this
Actually, not all.
coincidence?
Actually, not all. In fact, there are many incarnations which are not on earth. We discussed about Hayagriva, not on earth. Urmadev, not on earth. Lord Ananta, Shesha, not on earth. The Varaha, not on earth.
Oh.
Correct? Matsya. Matsya, is not in the earth oceans that he is roaming around. So it is a much more, bigger concept. So of course, Rama and Krishna, yes, they appeared on the earth. And one of the reasons, while one way it is not that all, for example, even Vamana is born as the son of Aditi, so they are not born on earth, right? Earth in the sense I'm talking about Bharat Khanda.
Yes.
Yeah. So he's the brother of Indra. He's Upendra. So many of these incarnations, not all of the incarnations are born on earth. Now, some incarnations are born on earth very specifically because there is not much deterioration of dharma on the other planetary systems. Like what we discussed, the Bharat Varsha is that area, is that place where we have Satya, Treta, Dwapara, Kali. We have Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudras, and we have all kinds of people of all kinds of different consciousness, from the highest Paramhamsas the most low-class sinners. This kind of variety you will not find anywhere else. If you go to Shalmali Dvipa and you try to look for sinful people around, you are not going to find them. You understand? Or Plaksha Dvipa or Pushkara Dvipa for that matter. To Bharatvarsha, you don't have to look anywhere. You can just go next door and ring the doorbell. You will find all kinds of people in the same family. I'm not saying your neighbors are sinful. I'm just saying that, yeah, you'll find Earth is a melting pot because it's a karma bhumi. All kinds of living entities are there, and that's the place from where people can go up, can go down, can go to hell, can go all over, can get a liberation. And because this is karma bhumi, and because of this kind of peculiar situation, because it is designed to be the place from where living entities are given the opportunity to liberate, that's why the Lord comes there again and again, Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya dushkutam dharma sansthapan. Whenever there is decline in dharma, the decline in dharma is especially in Bharatvarsha, isn't it?
Yes.
In other places, that decline doesn't happen because that they don't have this kind of a cyclic Satya Treta Dwapar Kali. They have a very similar static situation of a particular kind of course, occasionally there may be some specific demons who attack, but the condition of life is not really affected in a significant way on other planetary systems.
Got it, Prabhuji.
So the Supreme Lord comes primarily, he comes, of course, one is to establish principles of dharma, to destroy demoniac forces, dharma sanstapana arthaya, paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya dushkta. But ultimately the Lord comes because he wants to attract the living entities to him. By the way, since you mentioned this, I just want to mention one more point I was discussing with Amit Prabhu yesterday about Lord Ram's pastimes and when the Ram Leela happened. So there was some discussion. So I just checked with Pavanishwar Prabhu just to confirm. So the understanding I have received is that just like Lord Krishna, he comes once in a day of Brahma. He comes in the Dwapar Yug of the 28th Chatur Yug of the 7th Manvantar, which is the current Manvantar and the current Chatur Yug.
24th.
No, I'm talking
Chatur
about
Yuga,
Krishna.
Right?
I'm talking about Krishna right
now.
now.
Sorry.
Yeah. So Krishna comes in the 28th Chatur Yuga, the Dwapar of the 28th Chatur Yuga of the 7th Manvantara. So in the same 7th Manvantara, Lord Ramchandra appears once in a day of Brahma in the Treta Yuga of the 24th Chatur Yuga. Okay. So Ram and Krishna both appear in the once in a day of Brahma in their original form. Once in a day of Brahma. Both of them appear in the Vaivasvat Manvantara, which is the 7th Manvantara. Krishna appears in the Dwapar of the 28th Divya Yuga, and Ramchandra appears in the Treta Yuga of the 24th Divya Yuga. Which means the Ram Leela did not happen in the Treta Yuga of this Chatur Yuga. It happened 4 Treta Yugas ago. So Amit calculated and he told me it's around 18.5 million years or something like that ago. So that's the information. So somehow through the blessings of the great souls, all these pastimes have been preserved and been passed through great saints and sages across so many yugas for all of us. Anyway, I just thought I wanted to share this because this is also an interesting piece of information. So, Tarun, did I answer your previous question? Yeah.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Santanamji? Yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Is it The function of Paramatma inside us is to witness our actions or anything else, Prabhuji? Yes.
He says, no, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, right? The sarvasya chaham hridisannivishto mattar smrutir jnanam apohanam cha. Smriti, from him comes remembrance, forgetfulness, and he's also the witness. Which means, Prabhupada explains this in many places, the Paramatma is witnessing us. Of course, there are many functions of the Paramatma. One is that he's always accompanying the soul. See, the point is, even though the material world is created, the Lord's active involvement is required at every stage to sustain and run the world. Not just the cosmic manifestation, but even us. Even when we are in the body, the Lord has to continuously support us. He has to remind us, oh, this is what you wanted to do. Oh, the last life, this is what, so he will give you the memory. And he will enable even the forgetfulness. So the Lord facilitates as Paramatma all these aspects of the Jiva. And ultimately, of course, the Paramatma is waiting for the Atma to turn face towards it so that it can actually help him come back to him. So Paramatma is obviously ultimately the final witness. Correct, yeah. But Paramatma, is not openly coming out and, being the judge. So he lets material nature and the arrangements of material nature to do the assessment and the punishment and reward. But behind the scenes, of course, Paramatma is monitoring the whole situation. If needed by Paramatma, any intervention, the Paramatma will do. Because ultimately the karmic records also can be directly adjusted by the Paramatma. Because he is the ultimate controller. And that's why Krishna says also, right, in the Bhagavad also, the Rudantasto Hyabadrani Vidunoti Surutsita. So when a person performs devotional service, the Lord sitting in the heart burns away all inauspicious things, including the karmas. So that is the potency of the Supreme Lord. He can do that. But externally, there is a material arrangement, of course, to assess our karmas and give punishments, which is according to the law set by the Paramatma ultimately, by the Supreme Lord. But the Supreme Lord is monitoring and supporting the system and intervening. Generally, he doesn't intervene except for his devotees. Otherwise, he generally performs his role as witness and facilitator. But for his devotees, he will intervene. Krishna takes very special interest in the lives of his devotees. Very special. There's this interesting story I shared today on WhatsApp. I don't know how many of you read it when Mataji sharing. So, and it's not just true for her, but in all of our lives, sometimes you're not able to actually see and understand the hand of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But if we were able to see, we will really be shocked and surprised of actually how much the Lord, takes active interest. That's why it is always said that the Lord is much more interested in our deliverance than we are interested in going back to him. So when we take interest, he immediately takes over our file. This is to Yamaraj come. This is special. So he puts star on the file, which means no matter what you say, I have the final decision is mine. So the Lord will accordingly, based on his mercy and our sincerity, will adjust various aspects for karma to help us make more rapid advancement towards his lotus. Yeah, did I answer your question?
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji. And another one, Varagadev is lifting Bhumandal or
Entire Bhumandal.
Entire
Not Earth. Not the Earth Khanda, not the Bharata Khanda, is the whole disk. You saw the inner disk with the outer surrounding being the Loka mountain, which we'll discuss shortly. The whole thing is supported on Kurma's back is Shesha, and then Shesha is supporting that disk. So that was tilted and it sank into, that whole disk sank into. That disk is small, right? It's not the whole expanse of the diameter of the universe. And later we'll discuss it in the next class, then you will understand. You see, then there is the disk, then there is the Lokalok mountain, then there's the Alok region, there's the Ghanodaka region. So that disk can actually fall and sink into the Garbhodak ocean. So then Varahadev lifts it twice in a day of Brahma, the Chakshusha Manvantar and the Shweta Varaha. Yeah, there are two Manvantaras in which he comes. Okay, yeah. Is that okay? Anything else?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. One
Yeah,
question.
yeah, Sridharji, Hare Krishna. Yeah.
Prabhuji, so this after 4 yugas in one day of Brahma, the devastation takes place, right? So is that applicable to only Bharatkhanda or its entire universe?
Yeah. Only to us. At the end of the 4 yuga, at the end of Kali, the devastation that is there is mainly for us. It doesn't affect the others. Because they do not have the Satya Treta Dwapar Kali cycle. So the main kind of destruction at the end of Kali is a different kind of destruction. It is basically Kalki finishing off the demoniac and re-establishing Satya Yuga. And that kind of a situation doesn't arise on the other dvipas. So the kind of destruction which happens in the other dvipa is mainly during there is one kind of destruction at the end of a Manvantara. I do not have the details of that. But the bigger destruction is at the end of the day of Brahma. Because at the end of the day of Brahma, when the night of Brahma comes, all the planetary systems up to the Swargas are entirely submerged. So only the higher planets, Chanar, Mahar, Tapa, Satya, survive. All others are, the life is destroyed at every night of Brahma. That is the Kalpanta. Of course, at the end of lifetime of Brahma, the whole universe is dissolved, including Lord Brahma himself. So when Brahma and the higher planets sleep, then Bhuva Swaha, and obviously including the lower planetary systems, are devastated. I think, and as I understand, it is mainly, I think it's mainly a water pralay, but I need to read up on that. That's how I remember it.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, one more question. So this Leelas, so the same thing will be repeated every day of the Brahma, the Krishna Leela, Ram Leela, all this same, or like it will be different in different days?
There may be slight variations, create some excitement, have some. It is at Ram Leela also, there are slightly different variations. I think I mentioned this last time also. In some Ramayanas, the storyline becomes slightly different. That's what I've heard from some devotees. I do not know what the source of that is. But obviously the key characters are the same. But the storyline and some of the details of the stories may be slightly different from yuga to yuga. So the Lord has been appearing since time immemorial. So obviously, maybe adjusting it little bit here and there. Maybe in a certain time, Krishna, rather than killing Kamsa, maybe preaching to Kamsa and making him a devotee. I don't know. It is said in Ramayana, in some Kalpa, the Ramayana was very different. Ravana was not killed, but something to that effect. A very different kind of a episode happened. So there may be variations. So what we have right now as the Bhagavad is obviously the Bhagavad as is compiled based on the Krishna Leela which has manifested in the Dwapar Yuga of this Kalpa, and Valmiki Ramayana is the Ramayana based on Ram's Leela which manifested in this Kalpa in the 24th Chaturyuga. But sometimes what happens is, for very great pure devotees, in their heart sometimes different Leelas become manifest, and they may in their Leela and in their meditation see certain Leelas manifest in slightly different ways, because the Lord performs these pastimes with some variations across, different yugas for different purposes. See, the Lord is so unlimited. That's why we should never claim I have understood everything and I know everything. Lord is so unlimited. His pastimes are so unlimited, and the Lord does all kinds of things. Everything you can imagine, the Lord would have done somewhere in some form or the other. Prabhupada and the Acharya says that there is no species in which the Lord doesn't take incarnation. Only some. The Lord incarnates amongst elephants, amongst horses, amongst bulls, amongst monkeys, amongst mosquitoes. So we know so little. We have no idea what all is going on around. We are actually so insignificant and so dependent on the Lord. But we become so proud and we think we are so great. Wherein actually all the power, intelligence, memory, we need active support of the Paramatma for everything we do. Correct? Just like my computer right now, I am doing so many things. Suddenly if the power goes up, no Zoom, no computer, nothing, everything. So if Paramatma withdraws his potency and his active participation, everything will collapse. So we are like that. Okay, so anything else?
Yeah, thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hari Bol. Okay, so another auspicious day in this month of Purushottam. So we will conclude today's day. Just want to recite this beautiful prayer for Purushottam. Govardhana dharam vande gopalam goparupinam gokulotsavam ishanam govindam gopika priyam. So now free to Lord Hari, seeking his blessings that we may progress in our devotional service. I worship the lifter of Govardhan Hill, who has a beautiful form of a cowherd boy and who continually plays with the Gopas. He is the Lord of Gokul, wherein every day is a festival. So that's the land which we want to achieve, where every day is a festival. So the kind of variety which is in the spiritual world every day, every moment is a festival. What to speak of every day? Every sight of Krishna is a festival. Every day Krishna dresses in a way where he has never dressed like before. Every meal which Radharani prepares is an excitement for Krishna since time immemorial. What today Radharani has? She never repeats the same menu twice. So these, even speaking like this is like inconceivable for us. We cannot even imagine. the Lord's potency. Our experience in this Bharat Khanda is so limited and so small. We have no idea of the unlimited potencies of the Supreme Lord and the unlimited variegatedness that can be manifested. The variegatedness that we talk about, we can only talk about based on our experience. That's why what is described to us is also based on our experience. It is said in the higher realms, there are even colors which we cannot see here with this body. Speak of other things. So we have so much, just one small dot. Okay, so thank you very much. So we will continue our discussion on Tuesday. Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki.
Jai.
So we complete the chapter hopefully next time. Thank you. Haribo.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare
Krishna Prabhuji.
Thank you everyone.
Hare Krishna
Hare
Prabhuji.
Krishna Prabhuji.
Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Prabhupada ki jai,
Hare,
Grantara Srimad
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you very much.
Haribo.
Haribol.
Haribo. Next time. Thank you. Hare Krishna, Mihira Aditi.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Haribo. Sneha ji, Pooja ji,
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Sharmi.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Deepavali Mataji. Sridhar Prabhu is amongst the Gopas and the Gopis in Goloka. So that is the festival. What is behind you is the festival. How everybody is looking at Krishna every day because he is decorated so wonderfully. Every day. It's a festival for the eyes. Okay.